Welcome in to another episode of Chiefs Focus Live. Today we've got a show that I feel like we've done a few times over the last couple of off seasons. We're going to talk a little wide receiver room, rebuilding. It's the start of the off season. Kansas City's looking to do the three-peat. We got to start with some of the wide receivers. My name is Quentin Morris. Thiz is running the show in the background. And now a guy who's hoping to start his own dynasty. It's the professor, Caleb. How's it
I'm
going,
doing
buddy?
pretty good. Pretty good, man. How are you doing tonight?
I'm excited to talk about wide receivers. I think I'm going to piss some people off with my thoughts.
It wouldn't
So,
be the first time.
yeah, not nothing new. So I want to start off with what Kansas City has heading into next year,
Okay.
and then some people that I think they're going to sign, and one draft pick that I really like. That's the
Okay,
plan for
perfect.
the
Let's go and do that.
show. So just so everybody knows, these are the wide receivers that are officially going to be back. I'm already assuming that MVS is getting cut. So
Okay.
is that a fair assumption that we can make?
I mean, he did something in the playoffs, so they may try to bring him back, but I mean, we can say he's cut for this point. We can say that.
Okay, so Kansas City saves about $12 million by cutting him.
Okay, well, yeah.
None of his contract is guaranteed for this coming year, so that's why I assume they're cutting him, because it literally costs them nothing to go ahead and cut them. So obviously Rice is coming back. He's your number one receiver. You have Sky Moore coming back, and you have Kadarius Toney coming back. As of right now, that is your wide receiver room. Now, I think that they bring back McCole Hardman.
Okay.
I do think that. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't see why not. McColl's a great player. Yes, he's had his faults here and there, but for the most part, McColl's been able to do a lot of great things over his time here in the Kansas City. When you look at the stuff that's taken place, yeah, he's messed up, but you can say this: he has matured, as I can see, and he's played a lot better football, especially in the Super Bowl when the Chiefs needed him the most. Yeah, in the divisional round, he fumbled against the Bills, and the ball went in the back end zone, and that happened. But he didn't get down himself. He kept fighting through in the Super Bowl. He caught a long ball, a beautiful long ball that McColl from 4 or 5 years ago probably wouldn't have caught. And then he caught the game-winning touchdown. Great route. I don't see why not. It would come down to the numbers, but I think he wants a payday still.
I just don't know if that gets offered to him. So I think that's a good point. It's a good caveat for you to bring up if someone wants to get paid. But he had an opportunity last offseason, and he had to wait out until the Jets threw him a contract. So I just don't think that payday is there.
How much do you think he's going to get, though, if he signs with the Chiefs? If you don't know.
It's only going to be a few $1 million a year, and it's not even going to be. It'll be a 2 or 3 year contract. I don't think that McCole Hardman has that big of a market out for him, especially with some of the other guys that are hitting free agency. I just think that he sort of gets pushed to the end, and his most value is here in Kansas City.
Okay.
So I also forgot Justin Watson's also coming back. Okay. So as of right now, through this discussion, our current wide receiver room is bringing back McCole Hardman, cutting MVS, Sky Moore, Rice, and McCole Hardman. That's your wide receiver room.
Okay.
Right? I think that's
fair.
I'm not even going to talk Justin Ross. He doesn't exist. We're not even going to have that.
Practice squad guy that may get up there. You just never know.
So, one of the rookies draft picks that I really like Troy Franklin from Oregon. That's one of the guys that I'm keeping an eye out on. I think it's realistic for Kansas City to try and get him at 32. I also am a fan of Brian Thomas Jr. from Washington and Keon Coleman from Florida. Those are a couple of the guys that I'm keeping my eye out on. If we can do a little deep dive more into some of these guys, but when probably post combine when we get some more information. But just so everybody knows, those are a couple of the guys that I'm keeping an eye on. Obviously, Kansas City is not getting like some of those top guys. I mean,
Kansas City's Marvin Harrison or Malik. Get those two.
That's not happening. You're going to get probably the 6th wide receiver off the board. I mean, that's probably what Kansas City is going to end up getting at the bottom of the first round. If you end up even taking a wide receiver, that late. I would almost, and maybe we can talk about this on Thursday, but I think Kansas City should go defensive line in the first round. And we can talk about that on Thursday because Kansas City needs to once again rebuild their offensive or their defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go wide receiver in round 1, I think it's probably going to be one of those. Also, those Texas wide receivers,
Yes.
Mitchell is another guy that I'm interested in.
And
But
Xavier Worthy is fast. That guy is fast.
so there's good options there for Kansas City to have in order to get someone in the bottom of the first round. But yeah, that's sort of what I'm feeling right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the big thing that I think this is a guy that I know a lot of people are interested in, but I'm not so sure it happens. There are two of them. The first one is Calvin Ridley. I know a ton of people are really interested in getting Calvin Ridley, and I get it. He's a guy that has history in a similar. Uh, Calvin Ridley has history in a similar system, right? Coming from Jacksonville, Calvin Ridley was actually a 1,000-yard receiver last year.
Okay.
Started off really slow, but seemed to pick it up. So one of the interesting things about what's up, Will? One of the interesting things about Calvin Ridley is that he played a ton on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
At 1,016 yards, 18% of the time he played in the slot, and 81% of the time he played outside. I think that's something that Kansas City is missing, especially if you're not going to bring MVS back. You are
Mm-hmm.
100% missing a true outside wide receiver, and that's something that Calvin Ridley can bring. So I'm
Okay.
interested in bringing Calvin Ridley in. I think the problem is the number that he's going to get from other teams. He's going to turn 30. Spot Track has his number at around $17.5 million
A year?
a year.
Ooh.
Don't
Okay.
think that's viable for Kansas City. Just because, like I said, you need to rebuild your defensive line as well. So you can't go out and spend a ton of money out on a wide receiver like Calvin Ridley. It's the same problem I have with Mike Evans. We all know about Mike Evans. He's been in the year for a decade. He's been in the league for a decade
Mm-hmm.
and has consistent 1,000-yard receivers with tons of different quarterbacks, going back from 30 for 30, Jameis Winston, to all the way now to Baker Mayfield, right? It's a guy that's been extremely consistent over his career. The Buccaneers have, or seem to have said that they're not going to franchise tag him, so he seems to be an unrestricted free agent, which means he's going to get paid by somebody, and
Yes, I agree.
that's going to be Kansas City. I think he's going to get paid in the mid 20s. 24 to $27 million a year is what he's probably going to get paid. You got to remember when we're having these discussions about free agents, you're always going to quote unquote overpay. Everything's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more expensive, especially for those first day or second day guys, because there's multiple people vying for you. So you got to add about 20%. That's the number that generally gets added on to is 20% of what their market value would you would think it is. Add more on top of it, and that's what you expect guys to get. So the guy that I think Kansas City is going to sign is KJ Osborne of the Vikings.
You think so?
I think KJ Osborne of the Vikings. Hear
Okay.
me out. So I was looking at his numbers. Now this is a guy he was 558 yards this year. However, in the past he's been a 600-yard receiver. And what's crazy is KJ Osborne played a majority of his snaps on the outside. He did
Okay.
not play. He played 65% of his snaps on the outside. Kansas City needs a true outside wide receiver. And when I was looking at his projected numbers, I went to two places. Spot Track has him making about $7.5 million a year. So Spot Track has KJ Osborne projected to make a 2-year, $15 million contract.
Okay, I can see that.
Kansas City can get that. Then I was at Over the Cap, and they have this system where they break down each week, and they say his production was equal to this level of player, and they break it down. If he was this level of player every week, his contract would be this.
Okay.
So I went through and I added up and averaged out what his value was this year, and it was about $12 million. So he played like a $12 million wide receiver last year.
But he's only going to get 2 years, $15 million, most likely 16.
So now for my prediction, I think that he gets a 2-year contract from $15 to $22 million.
Okay.
And I think that's the perfect spot for Kansas City. So I think KJ Osborne is the guy that I'm looking out for as for Kansas City signing a true outside wide receiver, a very good complement piece, very much like an MVS type, right? He's a guy that can take the top over the defense, not with speed, but just with great route running and
Ability.
somebody who's comfortable in that situation.
Mhm.
So what are your thoughts on that?
So here's the thing. I mean, when you break it down, it makes sense. Now, it's not the most flashy pick that Chiefs fans want, and I can understand that, but it seems like it's going to be the most reasonable and reliable. I mean, you see the Chiefs got MVS for 3 years, 24 million, 8 million a year. If they can get, let's say, KJ Osborne to a similar deal, or let's say 2 years, $16 million, it's going to help. And that's going to be important because the Chiefs need a consistent receiver along the outside, and that's what they don't have. I mean, you kind of had that with Kelsey. I'm sorry, not Kelsey. You kind of had that right, Tyreek, but whenever Tyreek left, you had all these different issues and avoidance and things you're trying to figure out. So, yeah, the Chiefs are going to win 2 Super Bowls without Tyreek, but they really need a outside wide receiver, a dominant outside wide receiver to help them achieve what they want to do. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, is that if they don't have receivers catching the balls in the playoffs, this is not going to be a good spot. Yeah, things turned around this season, and it was a fairy tale ending. The guys were dropping balls at the beginning, but then they came back through the end. But what this shows is like they have to make the move. So I will like it. I know it's not the flashy move, but if anyone can get the most out of it, it's the Chiefs and Mahomes and Andy Reid. So I think it's a good move.
I don't think that Kansas City makes a flashy move in the wide receiver room.
The only way that happens is if a receiver drops their ego and then takes a 1 year, let's say $10 million or something cheap, relatively cheap.
Which I
But I
don't
didn't
think that there's a
think that
candidate for that, right? Like generally speaking, when you've
happened.
got there are a couple of guys that take that 1 year deal. They're the Juju Smith-Schusters of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good wide receivers that are just looking to prove themselves to the rest of the league that they're truly a number one guy, or if not a true number one guy, a guy that can produce for an entire season.
Yep.
And sometimes those guys are coming off of injuries. Sometimes those guys just haven't had the right system or quarterback to really truly believe that this is what they are, right? So you've got that level of player, a really good player that's just ready to prove to the world of truly what he is.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the guys that are older and are truly ring chasing. So
Mm-hmm.
Mike Evans kind of falls into that category, right?
Okay.
Except for the fact that Mike Evans has been so consistently productive over his career with those 1,000-yard years, and he already won a Super Bowl ring. So I think Mike Evans is going to look for that one last huge paycheck because there are teams out there that will give Mike Evans a 3 or 4 year deal,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see him getting a 3 year, you know, $80
$45
million
million.
deal. Like
80?
I could see him
Ooh.
getting
Okay.
20 to 30 million dollars a year.
Okay.
Especially if you think about the teams that are looking for wide receivers, there are a lot of teams that still haven't paid their quarterback yet and could definitely use a true number one wide receiver and to go out and help a guy on a rookie deal. Like if you're the Bears, right? And you're probably going to bring in a guy like what, Caleb Williams. I assume they're going to draft Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
They could use a true number one wide receiver. You know,
Mm-hmm.
basically look at what the Titans did when they brought in D-Hop.
Yep.
It's a very similar situation. You aren't paying your quarterback top money yet. Let's bring in a number one wide receiver, a true number one wide receiver, and see what he can do. Uh, I don't know what the cap space for like the Patriots looks like, but the Patriots are dire need of wide receiver help. They aren't
I think
paying their
they're going to
quarterback
stretch
yet.
some money out there. I think they're going to pull some money because they need help a lot. And that's one thing that's been really a struggle for them the last ever since Brady left, to be honest with you. So they're probably going to show some money, and they may even win the bidding war against some teams because they have a whole different viewpoint, understanding of the game in the offense. It's not Belichick there anymore. You have a bunch of different guys ready to do what they need to do.
Yeah, there are just a ton of teams that I think are going to be vying for Mike Evans that I think Kansas City is quickly going to be priced out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just don't think that Mike Evans is really that. So KJ Osborne is the guy that I'm very interested in. There's a couple of other guys that I know that are sort of on my radar that don't make me as excited. So I did bring up the Bears. They have a wide receiver, Darnell Mooney, right?
Yes.
He's had 1,000 yards in his past, but he's mostly a slot guy, and so I feel like if they bring like a Darnell Mooney in, you're really just repeating what you already have. If you bring in Darnell Mooney, then I don't know if you really should bring McCole back because I feel like they're very similar skill sets.
Similar. Who can
Uh,
you get for the cheapest? So that's the thing. Who can who
I,
know?
then I think it's McCole Hardman.
Yeah, and he knows the
That's
offense. Yeah.
especially because you have right now Kansas City could, at least in theory, like this second, they could release a deal that they signed McCole Hardman to. They can't talk to Darnell Mooney yet,
Mm-hmm.
so they can only talk to him when he hits free agency here in a couple weeks.
For the tampering period. Yeah.
Right. Van Jefferson is another guy that I saw, but kind of similar to Mooney, mostly a slot guy. That's the problem is that we as a fan base slash the Chiefs as an organization need
Mm-hmm.
to come to the conclusion of what are they looking for in a wide receiver. And I
Yes.
think you can agree with me, and I think the comments can agree with me that Kansas City is not looking for another slot guy. They got plenty of slot guys. They need an outside guy. And that's why I just keep coming back to KJ Osborne.
Well,
Even when Juju Smith-Schuster was coming here, he had played a lot in the slot, but he was also able to play that outside receiver role.
mhm.
I'm really sold on KJ Osborne coming to Kansas City.
And here's the thing I want to say this for all Chiefs fans. We've been a part of this roller coaster 7, 8, 9, some of us all their life, these many years we've been on this earth. The Chiefs have never really made a beautiful move at the wide receiver position. It's always getting those guys they know that can help them fix and work within the system. As much as I love Mike Evans, he costs too much. As much as I would want these other guys on the list, do they fit in with the system? The Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid and Brett Veach are going to find guys who they think best fits their system. That's just what it comes down to. I would love to have a D-Hop. I would love to have guys like a Mike Evans or many other guys out there that are really, really great. But it comes down to money too. The Chiefs only have so much. You can only budget and use so much what you can do at the time period. And what they're going to do be like, you know what? This is what we have. This is what we're going to do. We're going to find somebody who can help fit in our realm. And KJ Osborne is a great choice. And I didn't even think of him, Quentin. Some people are like, well, he's not the flashy name player. Fans got to get over that.
Yeah,
That's just how things work.
When you have the flashy quarterback, you're not going to be able to sign the flashy wide receiver free agent.
Because you already
right?
see if you find a flashy receiver, what's going on with in the Vikings with what's his name? Jefferson. He wants the bank. And it's like, how can we give you the bank, but we need to help this team as a whole? So it's a lot of moving parts, and the Chiefs have done a lot of good things with the cap to figure things out. Mahomes is taking a Brady-like contract in order to keep people stay together. You have guys restructuring and helping money from that area. So it's great to see all this. But also, on the other hand, too, we're noticing that the Chiefs are doing stuff that many other teams do not do. And the Chiefs have a lot of players that sometimes you could maybe group me are unselfish. They're willing to forego $1 million or $2 million here in order to chase the dynasty and get this ring. They're talking about three-peat. Hey, I would love to see a three-peat. You've already won 3 with Mahomes. You've been to 4 Super Bowls, won 3 of them. They have a good opportunity, chance to do some stuff. But they need to make a move at the wide receiver position. And I believe the person that they choose, because I believe with you, could be KJ Osborne, is going to be great. Now, if we look at the drafting of the area, I like guys, and I was kind of looking at the list too, Quinn, if I was curious, and we can jump back onto what you were saying later, but I like guys like Xavier Worthy and Keon Coleman.
Keon Coleman is a guy that I'm interested in, but continue.
A guy who I think could easily be taken in the mid-first to late first, and the Chiefs could very well make a jump. He is 6'4". Keon Coleman, he's a 6'4", 215. This guy is fast. On a Florida State offense that was dominant, he was a great, great player. Transferred from Michigan State to Florida State and was a dominant player. If he falls, the Chiefs need to do the right thing and get him. Xavier Worthy, a guy that's a speedster. You can put him on the outside. That guy tore it up at Texas. Every time I watched the Red Rural rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma, he was always on the screen, running, moving, jumping, catching, just doing all these crazy things. I knew this kid was going to be special because he caught a screen pass on the first play of the game in the Red Rural rivalry as a freshman 3 years ago and took it 80 yards to the house. You need guys like that can help spark an offense. And he can catch too, and you can put him in jet sweep position. So kind of you get all that stuff in one. So I'm very interested and excited to see what the Chiefs can kind of do moving forward.
Yeah, I think that we can all agree that no matter what Kansas City does, I think that they need to sign a free agent, possibly two,
Mm-hmm.
and they also need to spend a top 100 draft pick on a wide receiver.
Yep.
It's honestly, I know that this is that Roman Wilson, from Michigan, is a guy that I think you can probably get in the late second round, and
Mm-hmm.
also Rice from USC is another guy that
Burn
I
rights.
think,
Okay.
yeah, he's a great route. I mean, he better be a
Mhm.
great route runner. His dad is,
Yeah.
Jerry Rice, so he better be a great route runner. Um, those are a couple of guys that if you aren't spending draft picks in the first round, you can get someone in the second and third round. So that you have opportunities, you have chances to go out and get. Uh, Now, just because you go out and sign a KJ Osborne, you might be able to go out and get a Darnell Mooney. Um, what's
Mm-hmm.
the Marquise Brown, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a guy that if you were to get KJ Osborne and Brown,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not spending more than $15 million between the two, plus you already have Rice and Travis Kelsey is here. I mean, you rebuilt your wide receiver room before you even head into the draft, and you're spending a draft pick on a guy. So
Mm-hmm.
that to me, to make a little cross sport comparison here, Kansas City needs to build their wide receiver room like the Royals have built their starting pitching. You get one or two guys that are your guys, homegrown.
Mm-hmm.
This is who they are. And every couple of years, you're going out and you're signing veterans to, you know, you have to kind of go, you have to look up their name and figure out who they are to
Mm-hmm.
bring them in, and they're going to be solid dudes. And you're going to
Yep.
sign into 1 or 2 year contracts. They're going to leave, and then you're going to have to go out and find another
Mm-hmm.
dude to go and sign to a 1 or 2 year contract.
I
That's
agree.
what Kansas City's going to have to do from now on. Kansas City is not going to be able to make a huge splash play at the wide receiver position unless it's them trading away their guy. You have Patrick Mahomes, and I know that in a world where it was so much fun to watch this offense with Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes and
Mm-hmm.
Travis Kelsey and Patrick Mahomes, we don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world where Patrick Mahomes has Travis Kelsey, he's got Rashee Rice, a decent running game, and just some dudes. And that's what Kansas City needs to look to build, because if you set your expectation to where Kansas City's going to go out and sign, big name X, big name Y, you're going to be disappointed every offseason. This is the reality of having it. And you know
Mm-hmm.
what? You've literally won back-to-back Super Bowls
Exactly. That's the thing.
with an average offensive wide receiver room.
Yeah, exactly. They have made moves, and they're not going to get those flashy guys. It's like whenever two people are trying to figure out a situation that's going on, and they're basically everyone's putting their viewpoint at the table, and ultimately, this is what's the best thing that can come from it. So the Chiefs, yeah, I think in a perfect world they want to sign a Mike Evans or a great wide receiver, D Hop. But on the other hand, you only got so much money, so you have two different sides, and they're like, okay, how are we going to figure this out? And then they're like, okay, we're just going to go Darnell Mooney route, or we're going to go KJ Osborne route. Guy, 2 years, $60 million, 3 years, $24 million, third year team option. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense.
And you're going to have to take advantage of the guys that were like KJ Osborne. He's behind Justin Jefferson. Okay. So this is
Mm-hmm.
a guy that his stats are going to blow you off the board, but context matters, right?
Yep.
Like
I
this
agree.
year was a quote unquote down year. But remember, Kirk Cousins like tore his Achilles halfway through the year.
Mm-hmm.
So he was with backup quarterbacks for the half the year.
Yep.
He was behind Justin Jefferson. So he's not going to be the most targeted guy. Plus, they traded for a tight end, and they have another quality wide receiver. Like that was a full receiving room.
Jordan Addison, yeah, it's loaded
Right.
there.
So it's why I think Osborne just sort of got pushed off to the side, and it's
Mm-hmm.
why he didn't see probably your full potential of him.
I agree.
And I think that's why he's a perfect candidate for this 1 or 2 year deal, prove it kind of style for Kansas City to bring in, show the rest of the league. KJ Osborne can say, hey, look, I'm that guy. And then in 2 years, 3 years from now, somebody's going to sign KJ Osborne to a deal that we're going to be like, excuse me? It'll be the
If we did what we did with the Chiefs.
well, who was that Jacksonville guy? Um,
How about
DJ
no?
Chark, right?
Yeah,
He was
DJ
the
Shark.
guy
Yeah.
that whenever he signed, it was like, I'm sorry, what? He just
Hmm.
got what? That's the benefit of coming to Kansas City when you're sort of that
Hmm.
middle of the road average
Yeah.
wise statistically, but you know that your skill potential is higher than that. That's the play that Kansas City has to make every 1 to 2 off seasons. Kansas City needs to make that. And the benefit is college systems and the NFL systems are as close as ever in terms of the receiving game.
Hmm.
So every year we keep talking about, hey, there's these like 6 dudes that could go in the first round. They're first
That's a good
round
point.
talent wide receivers. So you can always go out and draft somebody. And because there are always guys to draft, in
Hmm.
theory at least, what that does is it limits the middle of the road money for wide receivers. Yeah, the
Hmm.
Justin Jeffersons and Jamar Chases and Tyreek Hills of the world are going to get paid. But Kansas City's never in the market for those guys.
Hmm.
Kansas City's in the market for that back end guy to come in and show off his skill set.
Do you think now? Here's my question for you, Quentin. Do you think these big name guys could take a pay cut, a huge pay cut to pay the Chiefs, or do you think that's just a pipe dream?
No,
Because we see it happen with the Patriots, and you have guys all the time saying, "Oh, I want to be a part of a championship team," but then they sign in with a team with like the Titans or
yeah,
the Jets and things like that. So, do you think Kansas City can finally get the benefit of your doubt, or do you think it'll even ever happen?
I think Kansas City will get the benefit of doubt on those middle of the road guys, right? Like if you're KJ Osborne and Kansas City offers you 2 years, 20 million,
Mm-hmm.
and you get an offer from I don't know some mediocre team. Okay, I know the Texans don't need a wide receiver, but just follow me here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Texans offer you, 22 million over 2 years. Why am I going to Houston? You know, or let's say or the
Mm-hmm.
Broncos, right? Who have just you don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be like. Similar situation. Kansas City offers you 2 years 20. Denver offers you 2 years 23. Okay, well, I know that I have a better chance of getting more by showing off my talent in Kansas City. So I
Exactly.
think that when you've like got a tiebreaker type deal, I think Kansas City sort of breaks that tiebreaker, right? They've
And
got the
Mahomes
tie-breaking
there
vote.
too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Playing with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes is that tiebreaker vote. But when you start talking about 5, 6, you start getting into double digit millions of dollars, I think that's when the money ends up paying over. And I don't blame any of these guys.
Mhm.
You're talking about life-changing money, especially for the guys that I've lit, Darno Mooney, KJ Osborne, and Van Jefferson. These are guys that haven't gotten a big payday yet, right? These are guys that have been playing off of rookie contracts. Like KJ Osborne was a 5th-round pick.
Oh, money's
So
not
this is
there
a
really.
guy that, yeah, he's made more money than I'm going to see in the next decade plus. But he's a guy that is looking to make money on a larger scale because he hasn't seen big money in an NFL wide
Yeah,
receiver room.
and that's a
So
good point. Because when you look at all that stuff coming to a fold, yeah, you love the shiny, the best guy out there, but like those middle road guys that can make an impact, it's gonna win them over. Because why would I go to Denver, but I could go with Mahomes for $3 million less, and have an opportunity to play in some big games, and my stuff can be showcased, my talent, my skill level, my route running, my catching, my ability, all that will put on national stage. So anytime something good or bad, sorry, excuse me, every single time good or bad something happens about Mahomes, it's there all over NFL Network, ESPN, Fox Sports, Yahoo, it's everywhere. So it's only going to benefit those players.
yeah, those are the kind of wide receivers that I think Kansas City has the advantage of getting. It's those guys to where the money's close, the tiebreaker goes to Mahomes. Or, let's say I don't think there's a wide receiver that's like 36 looking for a 1 year deal, but those
Oh,
sort of guys, Kansas City would, get the tiebreaker on because
mhm,
then at that point you're quote unquote ring chasing, right?
mhm,
Um, I'm still interested in Calvin Ridley. I think he brings a lot to the table. I think he
mhm.
had an underrated season. And I think part of that was, if you remember early in the year, it was like they were just trying to feed the ball to Calvin Ridley
Yep.
and it wasn't working. Uh,
Mhm.
and so the Jags offense, it also just didn't look good this year. So I think that with Calvin Ridley, I'm interested in it, But man, if Spot Track is right, and they've got their, they've got a pretty good idea of what the NFL world thinks of different
Mm-hmm.
players. If they're saying that he gets around 17 million a year, oof, man, that's quite a bit for a guy that's already 29 years old.
Yeah. Now, I have a question for you. Would you be interested in the Chiefs trading for maybe a Michael Pittman Jr., making
Man,
that
I
trade?
know. I kept speaking it into existence to
Mhm.
try and get Michael Pittman Jr. here in Kansas City, but from everything, it seems like Michael Pittman Jr. is going to get franchise tagged by the Colts.
Mm.
Same with that Bengals wide receiver,
T. Higgins?
T. Higgins. T. Higgins and Michael Pittman Jr. seem to be the two wide receivers. Both of them are getting franchise tagged, it seems like. That's sort of
Mm.
the reporting that's coming out. Now, that
Got
means that Tyler Boyd is going to be a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think he also gets a pretty big deal from somebody.
Okay.
So, would I
So
be
for
interested in trading for Michael Pittman Jr.? No.
Hmm.
I think that Kansas City needs to sort of go in the opposite direction where they need to acquire more draft picks, not less.
Hmm.
So
So just
Kansas City needs
talent,
to,
stock the roster with cheap talent.
yeah, I think Kansas City needs to trade out of 32 if they can. I actually think that Kansas City, this isn't wide receiver room, but
Mm-hmm.
I think Kansas City can get a first round pick, 2 first round picks this offseason.
For their
So
31st pick.
no, they can keep their 32nd pick. So if we're done, do you have anything else you want to say on wide receivers before I give you my conspiracy theory?
No, go ahead. Go on with your theory, my friend.
I think Kansas
I'm ready.
City should put the non-exclusive franchise tag on L'Jarius Sneed.
Okay.
So this is the same thing that the Ravens did to Lamar Jackson, where they put
Okay.
the non-exclusive franchise tag on Lamar Jackson. And what it is it's a franchise tag, except that other teams get the opportunity to negotiate a contract with you as if you were a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
And then if Snead accepts a contract with another team, what happens is that Kansas City gets a chance to match, or that other team sends you 2 first-round picks for the player.
Huh.
So Kansas
Okay.
City should put the non-exclusive franchise tag on L'Jarius Sneed, and some other team is going to try and sign him because he's an elite corner.
The two
My
first round picks though for Snead. I don't know if they would do that, but I mean, hey, I
I'm
love that.
so happy that there is precedent for it. Remember, in 2019, the Rams traded for Jalen Ramsey, and they
Mhm.
sent the Jaguars a 2020 and a 2021 first-round picks and a fourth-round pick in 2021. So there is a precedent
Okay.
for 2 first-round picks going for an elite corner. I
Okay.
think a team that should be interested in that deal is the Lions, because the Lions secondary was garbage
Oh.
island,
Mhm.
and it was what was holding them back in a lot of different games. You give them an elite corner, I think that sets them up nicely. Plus, the Lions are sort of in win now mode because Jared Goff, his contract is coming up soon, and then it's like, what are you going to do at quarterback? So I
Mhm.
think the Lions need to be ready to go out and make a big swing in this offseason.
Okay.
Signing Snead to a long-term deal. They have some of the most cap space. Signing Snead to a long-term deal, sending Kansas City 2 first-round picks, one for this year, one for the next year. Now, unfortunately for Kansas City, it's the 29th overall pick, but we've seen what Brett Veach can do with 2
Mhm.
high-end, or low-end, I guess, first-round picks.
Yep. I agree.
That gives you so much more flexibility, and that to me works out well for Kansas City. I think that is what Kansas City needs to do with
Mhm.
L'Jarius Sneed.
I like it. I think that's a good idea. I didn't realize that franchise tag was that specific, but that makes sense.
There
But
are
how
three
does
there are
that happen?
three kinds of franchise tags. There's the franchise tag we all know about. There's the transition tag, and then there's the non-exclusive franchise tag. The
Mm.
other two just never get used. I don't know why. But the non-exclusive franchise tag is interesting because they can't just take him from you, because they still have to send you those picks, but also you get the chance to match. So let's say there's just, for some reason, there's no market for Snead, and
Mhm.
someone offers him a, I don't know, 4-year deal for, I don't know, 12 million, right? Well, Kansas City, of course, is going to match that. So
Mm.
you let the other teams do the negotiation for you, and
You
then
just
you
match.
come in and just steal it away. This was the entire conversation last offseason about Lamar Jackson was
Mhm.
why didn't Atlanta have a conversation with him? Because they could have. They could have had a conversation and
Mhm.
tried to sign him. And of course, you're going to spend 2 first-round picks to trade up to get your franchise quarterback.
Mhm.
The Chiefs spent more to trade up for Patrick Mahomes if to get the 10th overall pick than 2 first-round picks for Lamar Jackson last offseason,
I agree.
if that situation would have played out. So yes, the non-inclusive franchise tag on L'Jarius Sneed, and he gets essentially traded away to the Lions.
Well, if anyone can find the next great corner, it's Veep. So if that
Yeah.
happens, great. If he stays here, that'd be awesome. Now, how much would is this exclusive franchise tag be non-exclusive? How much would they have to pay him?
If nothing happens, then it's just a $18 million franchise tag
You
for
think
1
it's
year,
perfect for 1 year?
which is high. But that's small enough to where you can work around. Like I said, you're saving money by cutting MVS. The salary cap is going up. So
Mhm.
you do have some contracts you can move around.
Okay.
So if I guess worst case scenario is L'Jarius Sneed is on your team again, I think you can live with that.
Okay. I can too. I think that's a good idea. I didn't realize that was that non-exclusive chat sorry tag was that specific. That's hard. I almost said Chad. I didn't realize it was that specific, but it makes so much sense and it's gonna help do a lot of different things as well.
Yeah, and I think that you know the chat is right. If Snead leaves, who's the next guy to step up? If only someone the entire last offseason was talking about how good Jamari Connor was.
Yeah, only
If
somebody. I wonder
only
who it
somebody
was.
in the all of the internet, anywhere
Mhm.
ever, talked about Jamari Connor.
Quentin, it was you.
Let me ask you a question. Since we're talking Snead, what do you think is most likely to happen to him? Do you think he stays? Do you think he stays on a franchise tag, on gets an extension, or walks? What do you think happens to Snead?
I honestly think he walks. He's going to want some money. He's won 2 Super Bowls. He wants that payday.
Yeah.
That's what I
And
think.
he deserved that. See, that's a guy that like he's made $5 million in his career. Like that's a guy who deserves to go get a big payday.
I
You
agree.
know, um, yeah, getting Snead. I don't see Snead honestly. And this is the part when I was talking about I was going to piss people off tonight. I don't see Chris Jones or L'Jarius Snead coming back on
I
long
agree. I'm
term deals.
sorry. 3 Super Bowls for Chris Jones, 2 for Snead. They're going to want the paydays.
And
I'm sorry, but that the compensate whatever the picks we'll get for them will be
compensatory
nice.
picks. Yeah,
Compensatory picks,
Chris
but
Jones, I can guarantee you Chris Jones will bring back a third round pick. That's the highest
I have a
compensatory
second.
pick you can get back.
Oh, okay, yeah, then it'll be a
Yeah,
third.
that's the highest you can get back as a third round pick. Snead, I don't know
A
because
four,
part of the way
third,
the
four for
compensatory
fifth.
picks work is
Mhm.
that it depends on what you do during your free agency. So like we lost Orlando Brown Jr., but we didn't get a comp pick for Jr. because we signed Taylor. So
Mm,
because we signed a tackle in the eyes of the compensatory pick formula, it was a wash. So we
gotcha.
didn't get a pick back for him because
Hmm.
we signed somebody else,
I see what you're
right?
saying.
That's part of how the formula works.
Hmm.
So if Kansas City were to, if you lose Snead, if you go out and sign somebody, I don't know what you're going to do there. I don't know how you sort of add back to that room other than drafting a guy. That one I'm a
Hmm.
little hesitant about, whether or not you get a comp pick back for. But I'm very certain that if Kansas
I
City
mhm.
lets Jones walk, you get a third round pick back for him. I'm just
Yeah,
not sure what the value is for Snead.
and as much as I would love to have them back, I just know it's not going to happen. I've already prepared myself. I'm like, look, if they leave, it's fine. It is what it is. But the Chiefs have drafted a depth at the cornerback for a reason. Now, defensive tackle is going to be more of a nightmare trying to figure out who we're going to get, who's to be helpful. But maybe the Chiefs can bring someone on the free agency period or something. So a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts. So
I guess since we're talking Snead and Jones, let's just say this. Who would you rather, bring back? You bring back
Jones.
one guy, money aside, let's just say we can make the money work, but you only bring back one of them. Who is it?
It's Jones. I mean, Snead. I mean, he's great. Does a lot of good things with Chiefs, but we were able to bring in cornerbacks in many different rounds. And they've been helpful. Chris Jones is a one of a kind. You don't really see that many dominant defensive tackles. It's always been Aaron Donald and him, and then now it's him and then Aaron Donald back and forth. And it just showed me like you got to keep guys like that, and then hopefully you can find someone in the draft that is available that can meet that status at least for another year. Who do you got?
I think it has to be Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, and I've been. It's sort of hard for me because the entire offseason I was like, Snead's walking, Snead's walking, Snead's walking, right? That was
Mm-hmm.
my entire take, was that Snead's not coming back. This is the last year for L'Jarius Snead. Then he played, and I was like, damn, he made this decision harder.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I got to double down on it, right? I
Yeah,
think Snead's walking.
I agree.
Jones, to me, I watched some of the Super Bowl again because my team
Why
won.
not?
And Chris Jones did so much into the game that the stat box will never show. There were
Mm-hmm.
so many pass attempts that he blew up the pocket right from the start.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we talked about how bad the interior of the 49ers offensive line was, and Chris Jones took advantage of that. He was all over Purdy. He forced McCaffrey to take, other reads to bounce outside. Like, Chris Jones is such a powerful force on the defensive line, and it's more than just his sacks. It's more than just his pressure. It's everything that Chris Jones does. And it's not something that you can easily replace. And as I'm looking at the number of free agents right now, Kansas City, these are the guys, starters on the defensive line that are unrestricted free agents. Chris Jones, Derek Nottie, Mike Dana, and Tershawn Wharton are all unrestricted free agents.
Mm-hmm.
That's your entire deep middle of the defensive line. Plus Omenahu, he's not a free agent, but who knows when he's going to be able to come back.
Yep.
So for week 1, you need to find 5 defensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'll probably be able to bring back Mike Dana and Tershawn Wharton, maybe. I don't know what their market is, but I think,
they're not going to be the cheap, especially Wharton.
yeah, I think Derek Nottie's leaving. I think he gets a decent sized contract
Decent,
somewhere,
like how what
somewhere
Saunders
else.
got.
You need to rebuild this defensive line, and bringing Jones back solves a lot of that because not only is he your best piece, but you can put lesser talented guys around him,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not really skipping a beat.
Sure.
I just think seeing this defensive line without Chris Jones is going to be insane to see what Kansas City can do, because I don't see how this current defense runs without a Chris Jones type.
I agree. It's going to be rough.
But Spagnuolo, obviously he's run defenses before without elite middle guys. I think that this is why I keep pushing that Kansas City needs to sign an edge rusher or an interior guy in the first round, despite the need at wide receiver. And this is going to be another defensive heavy draft, because looking at the free agents, Kansas City has one offensive starter that's a free agent this year. And it's a guy that we know who was going to leave. It was Donovan Smith. He is the only starter on your offense that's a free agent. And I think Wanye Morris steps into that spot and is your left tackle.
Yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball, you've got all those defensive linemen I just said. Then you've got Drew Tranquil and Snead and Willie Gay. So
Willie Gay is kind of already basically made it sound like he's leaving.
Yeah, so you've got half your defensive starters that are leaving.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to need to be another defensive heavy draft. It's why I really think that you can try and flip Snead for a little bit of extra draft capital to help you this year and to help you next year, because 2 extra first round picks even if it's 29 and another, playoff caliber draft pick next
Mhm.
year, I think that is just so valuable for Kansas
Yep,
City to try and get.
I agree. I agree. But it's just going to come down to who's available there, who's going to be available in free agency. So just a lot of moving pieces and parts. So we really won't know, have an idea. The next couple of months are going to be crazy. Once we hit March, it's going to be crazy the next couple of months.
Yeah, February is the worst month of sports.
Mm-hmm.
I've come to that conclusion. Like there's no playoffs going on. There's like March Madness obviously doesn't start for another couple of weeks.
Yep.
And the Royals' first spring training game is Friday. I only know that because I'm producing it. That's literally the only reason I know that. So February is the worst month for sports, despite the fact my team was in the damn Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It's going to be a rough couple of weeks, but we'll be able to get through.
Yeah. Uh, the only other benefit that Kansas City has is that there are some other defensive tackles hitting free agency this year, but I don't know if Kansas City will really be in the market for them. So we've got the Dolphins, Ravens, and Seahawks all have starting defensive tackles hitting free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Medebuke for the Ravens, Christian Wilkins for the Dolphins, and Leonard Williams for the Seahawks are all hitting free agency. Um, so there is a heavy defensive tackle class sort of hitting free agency. Maybe if Jones walks, you can get one of these other guys on a cheaper deal because some of these guys are literally half the cost that Spot Track has them making about half of what Chris Jones makes. So maybe you let Chris Jones go. He makes his $30 million a year, but you bring in Leonard Williams and for $15 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
So there is still an opportunity for Kansas City to, not get the same level of player back, but to get at least a good veteran back in order to play that position. But look, I think this is a mistake that fans make all the time. When you lose a superstar, your first reaction is, how are we going to replace him?
Mm-hmm.
You don't. You can't. They're superstars. They were one on their own. You have to figure out how to not replace the player but the production. And that's what Kansas City is going to have to do. And it's why I'm going to keep pushing I think Kansas City needs to go defensive edge rusher in the first round.
Mm. I can see that. I agree.
Like Chris Boswell from Alabama.
Mm. That could help.
That's all that I have for today. Do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about? Any
I mean,
final thoughts
good.
on Chiefs defensive line or the wide receivers?
No, great conversation like always, man. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I will have some. Um, let's see. Just going through the comments here. Amir Ross, has Snead staying on the Chiefs. He got a 5-year contract. Ooh, man. I can't. Look, I can't. I just don't see it happening. I really don't. I just don't see it happening. I just think that he's gonna get a huge contract in free agency, and good for him. There's a lot of teams that need elite corners, and Kansas City already has one of them. It's easy to keep an elite offense around when you have the quarterback figured out. It's so much more difficult to keep an elite defense around because it truly is an all 11 guy and part of the team, or it's all those guys on the field at the same time.
That's true.
So I just don't think that's happening. And we have to do the in Veach we trust. You aren't going to find another Snead in this draft, but you have McDuffie and you have other guys on the roster that have already proven themselves. So I think that we just have to come to the conclusion that Kansas City's defense will be okay. And in the wide receiver room, I still feel very similar. I don't think you necessarily have to go receiver in the first round. I think there's plenty of guys that'll be there in the second round. And especially if you draft or if you sign 2 free agents, you don't need to go receiver in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, drafting a interior guy, is just not as sexy of a pick. And I get that.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a lot of moving pieces and parts, and we'll just have to see what's gonna happen the next couple of months.
All right, I guess that's it for. We'll be back on Thursday. JP wasn't here because he has a family that he likes more than me. So that's that's the way that it is. I've accepted it, so you should accept it. Make sure you like and subscribe, and turn on that bell so you get our shows on Thursday. With that, we'll see you later, Cheese Kingdom.